The text message that should never have reached me. I honestly never imagined that a single text message, one I sent without thinking, would end up shaking my entire life. It started on an ordinary night. I had just come back from a small reunion with my old college friends. One of them, my closest friend Rachel, had drunk way too much. She looked exhausted, worn out from the constant business trips her husband Daniel had been taking lately. She said she'd been spending most nights alone and didn't even remember the last time they had a real conversation. On my way home, I suddenly felt worried about her. So I sent her a simple text. Hey, did you get home okay? You seemed really out of it. But a few minutes later, the reply came from someone I did not expect. It was Rachel's husband, Daniel. Hi, Emily. This is Daniel. She just got home and hopped in the shower. Thanks for checking on her. I froze for a moment. It was such a polite, gentle message. And even though it shouldn't have meant anything, I felt something warm in my chest. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to me with that kind of sincerity. And that tiny ripple was the start of everything. 2. The text that became a habit. A few days later, Daniel texted me first. He said he was in a quiet hotel room on a business trip and somehow thought of me. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. I texted back just being polite, and somehow our conversation stretched to almost 2 hours. At first, it was innocent. But slowly, without either of us noticing, the messages grew deeper. We talked about our marriages. Daniel confessed that he and Rachel barely spoke anymore. He felt guilty about being gone so often. I admitted that my husband, Michael, and I were practically strangers living under the same roof. We barely said more than a few functional sentences a day. He came home tired, turned on the TV, and that was that. Somehow, Daniel and I started filling the empty spaces in each other's lives. And soon, his messages became the only thing I looked forward to. One night he wrote, Emily, I find myself waiting for your texts. It's strange, isn't it? I stared at that message for a long time because deep down I knew the truth. I was waiting too. 3. The moment the line blurred, the more we talked, the more honest we became. Daniel said he felt alone in his own house. I told him I felt invisible in mine, and bit by bit, the boundaries started to fade. Then, one evening, he sent the message I had been both expecting and dreading. Emily, texting isn't enough anymore. Would it be wrong to ask if I could see you? Just once. I couldn't sleep for 3 days. I knew meeting him was crossing a line I could never uncross. But the truth is, I had already crossed it in my heart, and eventually I agreed. 4. The first meeting. We met at a quiet cafe far from our neighborhoods. When Daniel walked in, I felt my breath catch. He looked nervous just like me, but when he sat down, the conversation flowed effortlessly. It felt like hearing someone say my name for the first time in years. We talked for almost 2 hours. When it was time to leave, neither of us moved. Before we parted, he said softly, "Emily, I really hope I can see you again." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. And that tiny nod was the moment everything truly began to unravel. 5. Signs, cracks, and growing fear. The texts became more frequent. The feelings grew stronger. I became more restless. I put on makeup more often. I checked my phone constantly. And Rachel noticed. One day during a gathering, she suddenly said, "Daniel's been acting weird lately. More trips, hiding his phone. Emily, what if he's cheating on me?" My chest tightened instantly. But what terrified me the most was the way she stared at me afterward, as if she had seen something in my eyes. Later, she told me she had looked through Daniel's phone. She had found messages, lots of them, with a woman whose number wasn't saved. She didn't know who it was, but she knew it was someone. I went home trembling. 6. The confrontation I feared most. A few days later, Rachel showed up at my door without warning. Her face wasn't angry, it was worse. It was calm. Too calm. I opened the door and she said, "Emily, we need to talk." We sat in my living room. She took a deep breath and looked straight at me. "You and Daniel. Is there something I should know?" My body froze. I stammered out a denial. "No, Rachel, no, it's not what you think." But her eyes searched mine, digging, trembling, hurting. "Please don't lie to me. You're my best friend." And that shattered me more than anything. She left soon after, unconvinced but exhausted. And I knew I couldn't keep going like this. 7. Ending what should never have started. That night, I texted Daniel, "We have to stop. Rachel is hurting. This is wrong." He didn't reply for a long time. When he finally did, it broke me. "Emily, how do I stop something I don't want to lose?" But I forced myself to stay firm. For my friend, for my marriage, for myself. For the first time in weeks, I turned my phone off and cried myself to sleep. 8. The final message. A week later, Rachel called me. She said she had talked to Daniel, that he insisted there was no affair, and that maybe she had overreacted. Her voice was shaky, but she wanted to trust him. And just like that, the suspicion faded, at least on her end. That night, I felt the weight of everything crash down on me. My guilt, my loneliness, my choices. I went to bed telling myself I had made the right decision. But at 1:17, my phone buzzed. I knew who it was before I even looked. "Daniel, Emily, I'm outside your house just to see you one last time. I promise I won't come in." My hands shook as I walked to the window. Under the street lamp, there he was, standing still, looking up at my house, waiting. I opened the window just a little. We didn't speak. We didn't wave. We just looked at each other for the longest, heaviest moment. Finally, I picked up my phone and typed, "Daniel, please go home. We have to end this. It's the only way." He looked at his phone, looked up at me one last time, and nodded. A quiet, aching nod. Then he walked away. And with every step he took, I felt something inside me quietly break. 9. The end that taught me everything. Time passed. Daniel and I never spoke again. Rachel slowly returned to normal with me, though things will never be exactly the same. Michael and I were trying, talking more, sharing small moments again. What happened with Daniel changed me, not because it was exciting, not because it was romantic, but because it showed me something I'd forgotten. When you let loneliness grow, even the smallest kindness can look like love, and the hardest battles you'll ever fight are not against temptation, but against yourself. That's the real end of my story. A story that began with a single harmless text and taught me what it truly means to walk away